Hi guys, how's it going? We are live.
Hey, Ashley.
I'm really looking forward to having you guys on again today. I'm pumped about getting to reconnect and to share more from the EG team. Last conversation, I think we had a lot to say on, the CFI to DeFi flight and some problems with AMMs. And so we might pick up on a little more of that, but the world has definitely changed since our last conversation. So I'm excited to talk more about what it means for people and maybe how ICHI can help.
Sounds great. Let's do it.
Cool. So let's just kind of jump right in with introductions, and then I'll go to our first question. You guys have already shared your backgrounds on this call before, but let's have another round so that anyone who's new can hear who you are and what you do.
Let's do it. Jeff, you want to go first?
Sure. My name is Jeffrey and been with the ICHI protocol for about 14 months and have a background in data analytics. And so a lot of the work that I do right now is revolved around understanding the operational landscape of ICHI, tokenomics, et cetera. And I work really closely with the DAO and the protocol itself to continuously find new solutions that are applicable in the DeFi space.
And then I'm Ben. I've been with ICHI for a year and a half, and I run a lot of the marketing campaigns. So anytime we launch a new vault or partnership, we always try to, support other people building in the space. And my background is in engineering and marketing. So some startup, some consulting, and started a marketing agency before I joined the ICHI team. But love crypto, haven't looked back ever since, and excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm Ashley, and I've been helping out with education at ICHI for a few months now. And my background's mostly in education. And I've been looking all around me ever since joining crypto because it feels like things are coming from all directions. So let's talk a little bit about that likely shared feeling. So I guess recently news has been focused on bank insolvency and some confusion as to whether or not people's money is safe. And considering the control, I guess, maybe, or the large share of the US market in the overall crypto space, I wonder if you guys have any concerns, or what do you think the likelihood of some US chokehold kind of putting the kibosh on things in crypto?
Yeah, well, it's definitely been an interesting time to say the least, just with TradFi and its trickle down effect to DeFi and whatnot. But yet again, another centralized entity just playing around with consumers' funds, deposits, and so it's another flight away from centralized entities and into DeFi, which is again a reason why I'm really passionate about this space. But we've been burned already several times in the past 12, 16 months, and this is just a continuation of that trend.
Yeah, and to speak on top of that, it's really interesting to even see the crypto entities that are failing are typically the more centralized ones, or the ones that even have more of a US presence. It's almost like the system isn't meant to be centralized, and you're not meant to trust other people with your finances. And that's another reason why I'm passionate about the DeFi flight as well. Own your crypto, own your keys. It's all yours. You don't have to have other people just stealing it from you without your knowledge.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of confusion for people in general about how traditional finance systems work. I don't think that people really think about the fact that when they give their money to a bank, that bank can use their money to make more money, and they're only insured up to a certain amount. They don't really think about how that works, or really even care about the risk that's involved. But that's obviously the spotlight on crypto, even though some of the some of the structures are similar. So in the case of, I think, Silvergate Bank recently, I mean, that bank was solvent and they were still kind of attacked. So I'm wondering if this is some symptom of like larger economic downturn, or is this an attack on crypto in general, with banks that are related to crypto being targeted? Conspiracy theories. Ooh.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, and I think that there are multiple factors and multiple reasons and domino effects we see here. But I think generally with just the fiscal tightening of our current economics and the economy, it's definitely taking a toll on a lot of banks and their investment practices. And some banks have been riskier than others. A lot of these regional banks, as we're hearing about right now, are pretty much suffering from some of the decisions and consequences that they made when interest rates were significantly lower, and it was a lot easier to generate positive returns. And so, with the tightening of this economy, we're starting to see things kind of unwind a bit. And whether it's because of actual malpractice or mismanagement of funds, or whether it's simply because people just are scared and fearful right now for their money, there's just a lot going on right now. People are just scared and uncertain with what's going to happen to their funds. And with FDIC stepping in and a lot of banks upping the insurance, it's now just this whole veil of, well, if the US government's going to step in and insure my deposits, then what do I have to worry about? So we're kind of in this back and forth stage right now where it's just a lot of noise and a lot of different factors playing into this. But ultimately, it's a little scary for the average depositor and small to mid-sized businesses.
Yeah, I remember growing up, and the thing to do is get your first bank account and start your savings account early, and that's just how we were taught growing up. But I think we're starting to get to the point where people are starting to question that. Is that actually the best thing to do? Is a very low interest savings account the best thing to get my children set up on, or even put most of my money? What does happen when I send it to the bank account? Am I fully relying on whichever central government is in control of, just regulating and securing and providing insurance? And so I think there is an attack on sort of the crypto idea of, yeah, you don't need these centralized entities. You don't need these governments or any, other person deciding what to do with your money. And that obviously makes the people in power nervous. So, but they also don't have a better solution at the moment either. There's kind of a weird gray area between what is and what ought to be with like banking and crypto and money management. So I think it feels like an attack for now. It also feels like there's a flight to crypto. So maybe it is helpful for, crypto in general, just to be in the news more often and seeing why these, rules are being put in place, or these just various practices are happening. So we'll see what happens in the future. I expect it all to be sorted out at some point, but just not yet.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that this is why the public perception of crypto is so important, because this is like directly pointing to the need for decentralized finance. But because public perception is already so low, I think people aren't really making that connection. But it's like the same moral dilemma is existing here in centralized control of your assets in crypto versus like the traditional banking system. Somebody has control of your money and they can do with it what they want. And if they turn a profit, awesome, they make money. And if they don't, well, then the person who deposited it is left with the losses. And in traditional finance, the taxpayer is left with the losses because the banks aren't going to be held accountable for it. So there's really this question of like, how can depositors have some oversight? How can people who trust their money to someone else have some security and transparency in knowing how that's being used and whether or not their funds are safe? And it's like, well, pretty clear that blockchain is an easy solution to that, right?
Yeah, it's it's a great point. I mean, blockchain is and was built to tackle this issue, is getting, people's hands out of your own funds and you having ultimately control over your assets and being able to decide where you store those assets and at the cadence at which you want to withdraw or deposit or move it around. It should just be on you to make those decisions and not the decision of a centralized entity, be it crypto centralized entity or, a TradFi entity.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about like when Ben kind of mentioned the kind of process that we get put through when you come into high school and you start having money. You're like, okay, you need your first bank account, and this is how you write a check if you're as old as me. And I think now the question is like, what kinds of financial literacy do we want to teach and do we want to focus on? And to me, it's less now about the systems that are in place, but really to redefine for students like what they consider money and what an asset of value is. And having it, because it's all like trusting a system, like none of it's real. It's all trusting a system. So you just have to decide which systems that you want to put some trust in, and some that are transparent and decentralized make a lot more sense. So it's exciting to think about what we can explain to newcomers to the finance world in general, so that adoption will grow and innovation will continue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and kind of going off of Ben's, and you come to high school or whatever age it is, and you start a bank account, and you start a savings account. Maybe when we were younger, it was more of a piggy bank style, but as we got older, it turned into some savings account. But the yields on these savings account are tiny. I mean, I remember looking at my statements, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I made 30 cents this month for putting all my money in here, and just I didn't really understand where my money was sitting, who was using it, what it could be used for. And ultimately, it's just you're giving money to these entities that can do kind of whatever they want with your funds. And you're not really getting any of that value for them being able to use your funds. So I think that is a great point, Ashley. It's, maybe the focus should stop being more on these entities and more on just good practices, good habits, and transparency.
Yeah, it's almost like we should start teaching the value of money through just shells. Go way back. You have this many shells. What do you want to do with it? Do you want to buy housing? Do you want to buy food? Do you want to store it somewhere and earn more money? But when you simplify all of these different practices, you start to forget a lot of the scenarios of what we're put through now. Like, oh, you have to wait 3 days for your bank transfer to go through. Or, hey, this is how a check works. And, oh, cool, there's mobile deposit now. You just hear all these standard practices we think of as normal or think of as real, but they don't actually fit into like a shell simulation. It's, hey, I want to give you shells and you give me something in return, maybe a different shell. I don't know. Why do I have to wait 3 days? That doesn't really make sense. Maybe there's a technology that can actually solve that to make it faster and maybe more open source, so it's easier for us to track. I think that's where we can find a lot of value in blockchain and cryptocurrency moving forward.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. Actually, just recently, I sold these tickets. I resold these sports tickets on Vivid Seats, and the funding that I got for it, the person who paid for it, sent me the money, but then PayPal held on to it. So they sent it to PayPal, and I'm like, okay, so now PayPal has it. So I have to go and create an account with PayPal. I have to sign up, go through this whole KYC process, log into my bank, connect my bank to this service. And at this point in time, they have all my information. And then after that, it's like, okay, wait another 1 to 3 days until your money clears. And so it's like from the point that I sold this ticket to the time I got my money in was about 5 days. And I just can't believe that in this day and age of something like that still is happening all the time.
But that's the normal, that's the standard, how it works. That's what we've been
taught. That's what we've been told, that this is the norm. This is how it works. You send out payments from one entity to another, and it has to touch multiple entities before it gets to you. It sounds kind of ridiculous.
Well, not only that, it's like a system that's designed to very easily benefit some and not everyone. And so like people who are typically barred from financial instruments that would help them gain leverage or even just grow. If some people don't even have access to like the US dollar. And so this system and the way that it's set up is really easy to continue that inequitable structure, right? That inequitable access. And I can see that the outcome of some of these bank closures kind of only further that. Like if people are barred more access from being able to trade something like the US dollar or USDC, then it's only like exacerbating the problem, right? We're not overcoming any barriers, so to speak. That took me forever to get out. We're not overcoming any barriers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that whole USDC conversation is also another big, a big sticky topic these days.
Right. Like that put a lot of people on edge, and rightly so.
Yeah. I mean, just the fundamentals of it are pretty interesting to think about how we created this stable coin in order to kind of get away from using fiat and money. And the mechanism at which to peg to the dollar is by having reserves in a traditional bank account. And so it's like, yeah, you've created this on-chain solution for stable value and stable transfer of value, but at the same time, you're still relying on TradFi and centralized entities to enable that. So it's just very paradoxical, and it just makes you think. And I think that the landscape that we're looking at right now is it has to change. It has to be totally different. And we'll see where that innovation comes next. And we're seeing stable coin products, stable coins come out left and right with unique ideas. And so we'll see how this continues to evolve and ultimately provide the solution that we all came into this space for.
Yeah, and the more problems that the industry faces and the more companies that fail just opens up the door for more innovation and more companies to actually get it right. Unfortunately for the people involved in those failing projects, but, for the industry as a whole, probably a good thing to understand, hey, maybe this system doesn't actually work, even though it seems like the best one at the moment. So,
yeah,
well,
like last summer.
Sorry.
No. It's always just that, seeing these APYs, these astronomical numbers, and just the unsustainable tokenomics that were happening. People were just dumping their token into these protocols and getting rewards in the form of just these protocols printing out these tokens and just sending them out. And people were like, wow, this is great. 200% on my tokens. This is phenomenal. But really, it's just wasn't real and not sustainable. So as great of a solution blockchain was to kind of, on the finance side to help streamline payments and store of value and transfer of value, we've got a long ways to go.
Yeah, it's still very much underpinned by the traditional finance system. Those numbers on the screen don't mean anything until I can cash them out and use them to pay my bills, right? And so if I want my neighbors to be able to use cryptocurrency to put food on their table, then we need more companies and projects to accept cryptocurrencies as payment. We need to be able to buy goods and services with cryptocurrency. And so that's really the chokehold that I see. And we're not going to be able to decouple ourselves from banking systems until that is possible. So that's a struggle. But you kind of mentioned tokenomics, and I want to dive in a little bit deeper there. So I think we've talked a lot at ICHI in general about how traditional liquidity provision structures don't support projects or liquidity providers. So let's talk a little bit about how they suck for both of those people, and then we can talk a little bit more about what that means for inflationary tokenomics. I think we need to explain that for folks.
Sure. Well, let's just so we're working with this project right now, and they are working on getting their token listed. And so their first natural inclination was to go to a centralized exchange, list their token, and kind of just control who and when those tokens can be purchased. And I think that at first is a very safe, comfortable approach, but ultimately as we've discussed previously, it's not necessarily the most wise decision to start putting your assets onto these centralized exchanges. And so what we're working on now is bringing their assets from CeFi into DeFi, basically putting those assets on chain and building on-chain liquidity. And that's where ICHI comes in. ICHI essentially is a financial management solution for any project, token holder, hedge fund, or institution that wants to earn more of their token on chain. It's as simple as that, really. We've created these algorithmic vaults, essentially these pools that work on top of Uniswap v3, and they're pretty simple in how a user interfaces with this product. The algorithm itself is a bit more technical in that sense, but it's as simple as deposit your tokens on chain and have your assets on chain and grow your liquidity on there. And ultimately just be able to manage that a lot better and have this immutable record of what's going on and this lens that allows you to look at transactions and understand ultimately the economics of your token. And so specifically with this project, we're working on essentially just adding that liquidity to Uniswap so that the members of this project can swap, meaning they can buy or they can sell this asset, and be able to kind of, in a way, manage the way that their token flows through the system in that sense that they can deposit their tokens on chain, pair it up with a different asset like Bitcoin, ETH, or USDC. And as natural trading occurs, or people want to buy their token or sell their token, they have the ability to do so without completely wrecking the price of their token, which ultimately is the health and lifeline of a project.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense for any token project now to use centralized exchanges or centralized entities that can provide them yield opportunities and create markets. The problem is the only profitable way to do that up to this point has been going through these centralized entities, those entities that we've seen fail all throughout this past year, which begs the question, why aren't people going on chain? And the reason up to this point is because it's not profitable. As much as the values of DeFi and being on chain and transparent are wonderful, if it's unprofitable and you're losing money, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for you as a project with, a set amount of money that you have in your treasury. It doesn't make sense for you to participate in on-chain, decentralized tools. And, our vision at ICHI is let's make it profitable so people can actually use on-chain solutions, bring their tokens, on-chain, become, non-custodial. We want users to still have control. We want things to be tracked out in the open. But the only way people will do that is if it's profitable. And so our whole goal is to make this on-chain liquidity provision profitable.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I kind of try to explain to people who are new to the space and don't really understand liquidity provision is, tokenomics is like this huge topic, and there's a lot to understand, and getting a handle on whether or not a project has good or bad tokenomics. But in general, I just explain the sustainability piece of offering people huge incentives to offer their funds up for exchange. You can't do that for forever. But are there any other red flags or pitfalls that people might look out for if they're trying to understand the tokenomics of a project?
Yeah, there's a couple of factors that come to mind. I think two of them to consider. The first one is, when you go on CoinGecko or CMC and you search up a token and you hit markets and you go and you see where that token's trading. And specifically for this part of the conversation, let's focus on the decentralized market makers, if you will. So you'll go and you'll see the amount of liquidity in the plus minus 2% range within the current price of a token. And if you see that liquidity is minimal, and obviously that's very relative for different projects of different sizes, but if you see that you can transact and move the price of a token with very little liquidity, I mean, that's the very definition of not having liquidity is not having that depth to be able to facilitate trades. So if I'm able to buy, if let's say I put up, $3,000 and I bought a token, and that token's price moves 3-4%, that's absolutely a huge red flag right there. That is totally unsustainable, and no one wants to be living in a space where their assets changing price that frequently, that much. So I think that's one big red flag. I think a second red flag to look for is the kinds of backers and advisors that are working for a project, and how they're receiving their tokens as well, and the cadence at which they're receiving those tokens. Obviously having backers and advisors is essential to a project's success, but making sure that the token unlocks are set up in a strategic way, meaning that they're not all released out at the same time. They're all not unlocking, investing over the same periods and the same duration. I think that's something that's really important to ask projects questions about. A lot of projects don't necessarily have all that information listed out, but I think it's definitely an important question to ask. So those are two of the basic things that I would look at within tokenomics is, can you move the price of a token considerably with minimal amount of money? And what are the unlocks and token unlocks looking like from backers and advisors?
Yeah, and I'll add a third one there, where there are lots of projects that have a token and they have some sort of technology that they're building. And a lot of times those two aren't connected to each other. So in crypto, anyone can make a token. Anyone can be really good at marketing and make a really cool token icon. They can get a couple of their friends to go buy it, and then it's all just moving it around in a market. But it has nothing to do with the actual fundamentals of what the business actually hopes to do. And in my experience, I've attended a lot of conferences, met a lot of people in the space. There are people building really cool technologies that are really going to change the game in decentralization, decentralized finance, across crypto. They're building these great technologies, and a lot of them do have tokens, and those tokens drive value to their technology, and their technology drives value to the token. So if you can find the ones where they actually care more about what they're building rather than their token price, those are the ones you want to dive into and research and say, what exactly are they doing? Maybe they're not just here to make a ton of money and then leave. Maybe they're actually building something sustainable. But if there's a disconnect, it's hard to say. I mean, maybe they're still building something great, but the token can be on its own, doing its own thing. So it's good to just really dive into the fundamentals of these projects and figure out, how does their ecosystem even work?
Yeah, that's a great point, Ben. I think a really good project to highlight is one of our recent partners, Chainlink. So I think that so ICHI's vaults are now automated using Chainlink keepers, meaning that rebalances and our algorithms can essentially execute our strategies in a lot more timely fashion. So it just makes it a lot more efficient. But to do that, it requires the use of the link token. So Chainlink has built out these keepers, and obviously it's a really important function that a lot of smart contract automation that it needs, and you have to use the link token to basically automate it. So that's just a good project right there, where you can connect the ecosystem with the token itself.
Yeah, I always highlight that in a DeFi risks workshop that I'll teach. After just saying 1,000 times that I'm not giving anyone financial advice, I always say, like, make sure that the token has some utility, like that you can do something with it, versus like, this is just something to have, and the value of it is just riding on public sentiment, right? So yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit more about, I think in general, cryptocurrency is the onboarding piece. But Ben, as you mentioned, there's a lot of infrastructure that's being built and technology that's really valuable beyond this low-hanging fruit of a token. And even though we want to provide a system where people have ownership of their assets and they can have a transparent way of managing them and potentially growing them through investment, there's a lot more going on in this space. And one of those things is collaboration and in a permissionless space. And that's something that ICHI's really been exploring a lot lately and focusing on the DAO structure. So I wonder if we could talk a little bit about any changes made or like steps taken to increase DAO participation and how you view that as a huge value to the ICHI project itself.
Yeah, so one thing that's unique about ICHI is that we are a DAO, which means that our ICHI token drives governance power and value back to the ICHI community, meaning that we want people to be involved, we want people to contribute, we want people to vote on topics that are going on regarding our protocol and partnerships and anything just related to ICHI. We want to incentivize people getting involved in this sort of decentralized way. We think that when the community has the power above, central entities, that allows for sustainable growth rather than just having, one person having central control. So that's one of the core ways we've set up ICHI as a whole. And there are a lot of other DAOs that are out there, and there isn't a playbook of what a DAO looks like. There's not hey, here's exactly what a DAO is, and here's exactly how things are supposed to work. There are actually lots of different projects building DAO tools and saying, hey, here's how we think you could make your DAO more effective or make your community more involved or all of these things. And we've deployed a lot of these various tactics through community campaigns, getting contributors, incentives. One thing that's unique is our vaults and all of our sort of products. We started back with branded dollars back in the day, but the whole concept of our technology that we build is that value from fees that we generate goes back to the community. So we want people to, have these tokens, have these things, but, we're still trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure out how is our DAO going to work best? What exactly do we need? What tools do we need to deploy? And that's one of the things we work on, most of the day, because we want the community involved. We want people voting, and we want to have the most effective DAO that we possibly can have. But we're still trying to figure it out. But as long as the community remains on the top with that power to vote, propose, suggest, contribute, that's what really matters. And we've opened the door for that through our project.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions, I think, around how to get people to care and to be engaged and to actually show up. And I think there's initially a lot of interest in a lot of projects, and then you come into this organization or lack thereof, where people are kind of spread out all over the world and on different schedules and maybe have different interests, and trying to make all of those people work in the same direction can be a real challenge in a traditional organization where you're all in the same building and speaking the same language and working in the same time frame. And so DAOs have been a real challenge in general, just because they're made of humans who have to coordinate somehow, and that can be a struggle. But it makes me wonder if, a part of the reason that, adoption is a little slower than we'd like to see is because there's that like convenience tax. I don't necessarily care what's going on with my money in the bank because most of the time it doesn't burn me and I don't have to think about it. So I'm wondering, what will it take to make the general public feel like getting educated and engaged is a priority. Like, I can't ignore this anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Web3, essentially the Web3 movement is all about community building. It's about finding that niche, finding that group that you align your values with. And I think that if it's, one should be able to go and explore the different kinds of groups and projects that are truly building innovative solutions to problems that we have. And I think that that's probably the most important thing that I would say is find what makes you passionate. Find what it is that gets you up and says, yeah, I want to talk to people about this problem. This problem is real. It affects me on a day-to-day basis, or it affects my neighbor on a day-to-day basis. And I want to get involved with this. So I think that understanding what your values are and the conversations that you want to have to fix these problems that are pervasive. I think that's the number one thing that people should be looking at and looking for in this movement.
Yeah, and I would go back to my original shell example. Think of yourself sitting on a beach with your collection of shells, and you want to buy things, do things, live your life, and be a entrepreneur with it. Business, finances, the whole thing. Run yourself through the simulation of, oh, what if I want to get a house, or if I want to do all of these things, and just think of how easy it could be, and then think of what the current traditional system says you have to do in addition to how easy it could be, and then say, is this really how it needs to be like? Or is there a way we could actually make a technology that makes this faster, better, automated, and make it work? And I think there are a lot of crypto solutions that solve a lot of those problems, whether it's, speed, security, transparency. There are a lot of things that you would need in just a little shell ecosystem that could be done really fast with some of the crypto technologies being built nowadays. So if you can identify those and be in, one of the first to see it coming, then you'll be a step ahead when it actually does come through and it becomes profitable and everyone starts using it. You'll say, hey, I actually knew about that first.
Yeah, I agree. I think to both of your points, like the fact that this has become a space for collaboration, and yeah, the actual process is messy, but what isn't? And being able to connect with people who have similar interests or goals, and actually like pool your resources together to make progress toward a solution is really exciting. And there's probably some work that needs to be done on both ends of that relationship. There needs to be, I think people don't understand that every system that we have, every like routine thing that you interact with in your regular life, that was just built by another person, just like you, who was like, I don't know, I'm going to throw this together and maybe it'll work. And so I think we have this tendency, or maybe we're conditioned to not question and just to kind of like work within the systems that are built for us. So it's a real personal perspective shift that's required. And then on the other end of that, we really have to be great storytellers in Web3. I really need to be able to easily connect the dots for you from problem to solution, or at least problem to proposed solution, and you can help me figure out how we get there. And so that power of storytelling and education is really important. And, the needs assessment is all over the news for us. So I think that part is really clear. The problem is highlighted really well. So let's encourage more solutions. And I'm excited to be able to highlight that ICHI is offering one of those, at least for people who are like, I have this asset and I want to grow it, and 1% is not going to get me any closer to my dreams.
Yeah. It's I think really we're in the Web 2.5 space, and I think that that's where, when we're able to kind of bridge those problems that we see on a day-to-day basis with a solution using blockchain, and we're able to bridge those the problem with the solution using a simple to use interface where one could easily understand what's happening. I think that's the secret sauce right there. And so I believe that at ICHI, we do a really good job with that. I mean, that's simply connect your wallet, you push earn, and that's it. And so I really like projects that are able to take these complex problems and complex solutions and just break it down and make it super easy.
Me too. All right, y'all. Well, are there any other topics that you want to touch on? Any upcoming news or things you want to point people to?
Yeah, well, we're always working, and we've got a lot of new partnerships coming up, and I think that with Uniswap moving on to now being deployed on BNB, that's something that we're looking at. We're trying to see how we can continue to expand our reach into different chains, L1s, L2s. I think that ultimately, I believe that ICHI should be integrated with every single wallet out there, and one could simply have these assets on their wallet and simply click on the earn button right next to their assets, and that's it. So I think that those two areas are focuses and things that we're thinking about at ICHI, and we recognize that this space moves very fast, so we're constantly innovating, coming out with new products, new protocols, new ways to think about the problem that we're solving and fine-tuning our parameters every single day. So it's just a really exciting time to just considering everything that's going on in the macro and then how quickly things change in the blockchain space. We sit at a really neat intersect where we're just able to constantly innovate and provide new, fresh solutions for users left and right. So I'm really excited about that. And I definitely think we got some really interesting things cooking in 2023.
Yeah. And one thing I really love about ICHI is just we're solving a really big problem. So, the sky is the limit for how we do it and how many partnerships it takes. But, with this big problem we're trying to solve, it's all about helping other projects or other people, become more decentralized, help them earn more yield, participate in DeFi more efficiently. We're just kind of a support system for all of these other projects and chains. So it's really fun to go into like a partnership meeting and just say, here's all of the crazy things we can provide you. And we want to really support you and help you out. And we'll just sit in the back as the infrastructure. No one really needs to know we're here, but we're building really good technology that supports the whole industry. And yeah, it'll be really fun to see what comes next.